Hello, a very good day to you. I hope you had yourself an amazing day. This is the Black Hot Fire Network, the media of the 21st century, and this is Thursday Updates with me, Dimori. I'll be telling you about each and everything that was making headlines in Africa today. We're going to be looking at Dangote, who has set up his oil refinery that is set, whose oil refinery is set for sale. We're going to be looking at a lot of things, everything that was making headlines. Looking at the WHO is reporting that there has been a surge in global cholera cases and a vaccine shortage, as they always say. And of course, our main focus will be Dangote, which who owns Dangote is on books. He's supposed to be the richest man in Africa, and he has started a petroleum production for the first time in 3 decades in Nigeria. So it's a 20 billion USD refinery on the outskirts of Lagos, which was built by Nigerian billionaire Aliko Dangote. It has a capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. The refinery is now the biggest in Africa and is going to reduce Nigeria's dependency on imported oil products. And I know you're wondering, how come Nigeria imports oil and yet it's an oil well in itself? How come it still imports oil? It's because Nigeria exports oil, then imports oil. As ridiculous as that might sound, that is what Nigeria does. It exports oil and then imports it back. So now Dangote, I don't know what to think about this. Now Dangote has built a 20 Aliko, his name is Aliko Dangote. Aliko Dangote is the richest man in Nigeria and perhaps the richest man in Africa, might be the richest man in Africa. He has built an oil refinery with a capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. So it's now the biggest, the largest in Africa, and it is going to reduce Nigeria's dependence on imported oil products. Whichever way you look at it, I don't know which way to look at it. Aliko Dangote is rich. Nigeria is rich. He might be having his own selfish reasons for that. Of course, he's a businessman. He's not building an oil refinery to help Nigerians. He's building an oil refinery to add to his wealth. But I like it. I like it because it's in Nigeria. And I like it because it's going to employ Nigerians. And I like it because Nigerians will be able to access their own oil without importing it, exporting, then importing. So Nigeria is a country that should be having an energy independence, considering it's supposedly, it's even supposed to be the biggest, the largest economy in Africa, with the population it has, with the mineral resources it has, with the oil there. It's supposed to be a very energy dependent country, but it has always been reliant on fuel imports, despite it being Africa's largest oil producer. I want you to get the irony. Nigeria is Africa's biggest, largest oil producer, but relies on imports, relies on fuel imports. That's how ridiculous African maths is. You're the biggest oil producer, yet we import oil. So it has always been a struggle for it to maintain its 4 official refineries, because there's always fuel shortage, long queues at petrol stations, and a significant economic burden that comes in that now, due to the fuel shortage, the government has to always come in every now and then to try and subsidize on the oil. And so it ends up being Africa's largest economy, Africa's largest oil producer, but Africa's largest oil importer. It's ironical like that. So countries that don't have oil buy oil from Nigeria, then sell it back. So Aliko Dangote is the CEO and the president of Dangote Industries Limited, and he said that he has tried to do that for the last 28 years, as far back as 1974, but it has never been possible, because there's what has always happens in Africa whenever somebody tries to do something like this. We have sponsored vandalism. You set up pipes, the pipes are destroyed. You try to do anything, they're going to destroy it. So I understand in Nigeria it has always happened like that. In many African countries, whenever an investor tries to do something like that, the companies that are already there do not want anybody coming to bring in competition, and so they always, if not vandalism, then something always happens to make sure that it doesn't work. But Dangote's one is going to start being operational. And the refinery is going to produce Euro 5 standard diesel. That is a very high quality fuel that contains less than 10 parts per million of sulfur. So it's a very high quality fuel. Dangote is so what that means is Nigeria is going to be exporting high quality fuel. It's going to be exporting high value goods rather than it's exporting crude oil, because Nigeria has been exporting crude oil. It is now looking into refining and producing high standard diesel, high quality fuel, you know, that is going to be of international standards and that people can look into. And as I said, Dangote is a businessman. Take away any philanthropist thoughts that you have. He's there to make money. And I'm happy because he did that in Africa. We have so many billionaires in Africa who do not even invest back at home. So they end up investing outside Africa and the money ends up benefiting. You know, they end up buying properties in the UK, properties in the US, and it never benefits anybody in Africa, really. So I'm happy Dangote is at least investing back in Africa. He, the fuel refinery is going to, of course, employ so many Nigerians, because one, for it to be the biggest oil refinery in Africa, then that means it's going to need a lot of people working on it. And for a refinery with the capacity of 650,000 barrels is not a small refinery. And a 20 billion USD refinery is not a small refinery. It's going to create jobs in Nigeria. It's going to increase the demand for the Nigerian naira. For once, people will now demand for the Nigerian currency because they want to buy maybe the Euro 5 standard diesel. I don't know how that is going to pan out, because I understand there are already monopolies in Nigeria that have monopolized the fuel sector. I'm not going to mention names, but I know some of them. One has a red logo. You know, they have monopolized the Nigerian oil industry already. So I don't know how Dangote is going to deal with the monopolies that have not just monopolized Nigeria's economy and oil industry, but have monopolized the entire African fuel industry. Because trust you me, you go to any African country, there's a company that you'll never miss. There's a certain company that you'll never miss. It has monopolized the fuel industry in Africa, and it is not an African company. So it's the same company in Nigeria, but let's see how Dangote is going to deal with that, as he launched his 20 billion USD oil refinery that is going to be the biggest in Africa. Such things make me happy. I mean, I don't even want to read between the lines and start looking at where did Dangote get his riches. Don't really care about that. He started an industry. He started a refinery. We've been talking about creating industries in Africa. He created one. I understand at one point he wanted to create a fertilizer plant in Kenya. It never materialized, partly because of corruption and also because people were demanding money from him, and so he left. So I really don't care what are his intentions or anything, but we keep talking about industrializing Africa because it's very hard for an economy that is reliant. I can't name. Okay, it's very hard for an economy whose backbone is agriculture to become a developed country. It can only if it focuses on high value agriculture. That is, it doesn't export low value agricultural products. That is possible. But now it's hard, especially in African countries and developing countries, for them to value add on their agricultural products. So that is why you look at one basic characteristic of poor countries. They have agriculture as their backbone. And in most cases, the agriculture ends up being subsistence farming, where you're just farming food to eat for yourself. So that's how it's very hard for a country whose backbone is agriculture and subsistence farming, subsistence agriculture in that case, to materialize into a developed country. I can't name one. And so when I see African countries starting to get into industrialization, because the only way you become rich is through industrialization. The only way as a nation, as a country, you become developed is if you invest in your industries, is through industrialization. The more industries you have, the more goods you produce, the more goods are demanded from your country, meaning the more your currency is in demand in the international market, because apparently currencies, mark the word apparently, currencies are exchanged on demand and supply curve. So if nobody has demand for anything that is coming from your country, then your currency is going to be messed up because nobody wants it, so it's going to lose value. The law of demand and supply that says if the demand for product X is high, then the price of product X rises, ceteris paribus. If the demand for product X goes down, then the price for product X goes down too, ceteris paribus. So it's the same thing with currencies. In as much as there are other external factors, many of them that control currencies, the possibility, if you offering something to the international market and people are demanding for it, there's a very high possibility that your currency is going to do amazing. So now that Nigeria has started getting into industrialization with the first one, I don't know if there's going to be another one, but one thing that is going to happen is Dangote's industry is going to have a positive impact on Nigeria's economy, because one, people will demand now the fuel from Nigeria, and people have always demanded Nigerian fuel, but they used to get it at throwaway prices because it was unrefined oil. So now that Dangote is going to refine it and sell it as high value, as processed, refined diesel, fuel, and every other thing, then that means that it is going to have a positive impact on Nigeria's economy, because now for you to import your oil from Nigeria, your fuel from Nigeria, you'll need the Nigerian naira. So the demand for the naira is going to go up, and of course, that has a positive impact on the economy. That once the currency goes up, a currency is very important. How a currency performs is very important, because you also need to import things. So if your currency is doing well as you're importing things, you'll import things at cheaper prices in the conversion. The second thing that these industries are going to help Africa with, for example, the Dangote industry in Nigeria, it is going to employ a lot of people. Once you employ people, their standards of living goes up, the per capita goes up, the GDP goes up, and now once people get a salary, the standard of life goes up, the life expectancy goes up, everything goes up once money comes in. So it's a positive, a win-win situation. Dangote gets his billions, the Nigerian people get their naira, not in billions though. So how I wish more billionaires would emulate Aliko Dangote, invest in their countries, stop having money in he probably has money in offshore accounts too, but in as much as you're having money in your offshore accounts, at least try as much as you can to invest back home. You're still going to make money back home, and you're still going to benefit your people. It's your people you'll employ, it's your people whose standard of living will go up, it's your country that you're building, it's your country's GDP that is going to rise, it's your country's per capita that is going to do better, it's your country's inflation that is going to go down. So you have so many billionaires in Africa, but they never want to invest home. Most of them own companies in Canada and in the United States and in the UK, and they own properties in high-end states outside Africa. That is Nigeria. In Kenya, the Health Union has issued 14-day strike notice of unpaid salaries and lack of medical cover. The teachers are still striking. They are demanding for also, the teachers are even just demanding for them to be employed permanently. That is all they're demanding for. The teachers who have not been employed on contract, so they're saying we don't want this job that looks like it's never secure. How about you give us a job that is secure, that now we have a contract and we know that this is the contract and this is what it says. As that is happening, 7 health unions have threatened to strike within the next 2 weeks if the country fails to address their grievances, which include delayed payments of salaries, lack of medical covers, and failure to remit statutory deductions. So what that means is the government deducts money from them, but it never pays whatever it's. So you are deducted money for health insurance, for example, but the same is never paid. So the money disappears somewhere along the way. You deducted money for retirement benefit, but it doesn't reflect on the other side. So the unions, in a joint statement that was read by the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, the KMPDU, under their Secretary General Davji Atela, said that they are going to go on strike if the government does not intervene. At the moment, I think healthcare in Kenya is devolved. It's in counties. It's a county government issue. But there are people that, as a country and as a issue, we should always look at their affairs. It's doctors and teachers, because those are the two people who, one, the teachers. I mean, without teachers, then you have an Africa that is the way it is right now, in the dark, doesn't know what is happening, easy to manipulate, ignorant. But if we invest in our healthcare and our education, those two areas, if we just invest in our education and our healthcare and do what Dangote is doing, invest in industrialization too, with those three things, we would not be talking about people dying of hunger in Africa again. I'm educated, my life expectancy is high, so I won't die going to school because of malaria. And once I'm done with school, there's an industry that I can find a job in nearby. The standards of life, the standards of living, that country just is, So those are some of the things that we should really look into investing in as Africans, especially with the issue on education. We should invest in our education sectors, which we do not. That is why you're seeing teachers striking every now and then. Right now they are on strike because they are paid poorly. We invest in in the sectors that we should not be investing in, and ignore the very important sectors, So that is in Kenya, where doctors are now threatening to strike. Burkina Faso has issued new passports without West Africa's bloc logo. That is, if you look at the Kenyan passport, for example, it has the EAC. It's under the East African Community. But if that was the same in Burkina Faso, where it had, I'm trying to look for an image of the Burkinabe passport before. Let me see if I can get one. So it had the ECOWAS. It was the West African bloc in its passport. However, Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traore, has ordered for a launch of a new biometric passport without the logo of the West Africa's main political and economic bloc on the cover, which is ECOWAS. This is just to show the determination to withdraw from the regional alliance after the military leaders took power last year. The main issue between Burkina Faso and ECOWAS came in when ECOWAS threatened to invade Burkina Faso if Traore does not hand power back to the democratically elected president. So that is why Burkina Faso now, in retaliation, left ECOWAS. And to show that they're not going back there, Traore has ordered for the launch of a new biometric passport that does not have the logo of ECOWAS on the cover. The ECOWAS has been trying to persuade the three countries to come back. ECOWAS has 15 countries in it. Now, with 3 gone, that leaves 12. So now on the passport, there is no ECOWAS logo. There is no mention of ECOWAS either. That is just to show that Burkina Faso has decided to withdraw from this body completely. That is to show that they are not going back again there. So ECOWAS has been trying to use all forms of tactics to get them back. They tried to incorporate the newly elected Senegalese president Diomaye Faye because they thought he was young, and of course he's going to resonate with Traore, considering he's 40, Traore is 30-something, and now try to convince the 3 Sahel countries to go back to the economic bloc of West African states, that is the ECOWAS. Never worked. Now ECOWAS has been threatening the 3 countries. It said that, for example, the 3 countries' withdrawal would undermine the freedom of movement and a common market of the 400 million people who live in ECOWAS is 50-year-old, by the way. So every other method has been used to lure, to force, to intimidate them to go back there. With the latest one that has been happening being the attacks that have been happening on the three countries. The attacks have been linked to ISIS, that is the Islamic State. They've really been trying to destabilize the three countries, the Sahel countries, over the past few months. And the three countries have formed a three-way defense and cooperation pact, which I still keep asking that they operationalize, because they are yet to operationalize their three-way defense. It's not yet operational. That's why the attacks all over in Mali, 120 people were killed in Mali. There were attacks in Burkina Faso, attacks in Niger, because they are still operating individually, even though they've entered into a pact. They have also had very close, they've tightened their relations with Russia. That being one of the reasons why in Mali, for example, the Ukrainians were allegedly behind some of the attacks that happened there, with the Russian soldiers being killed alongside Malian forces. So now that they have been they have been cutting their ties with Western powers and seeking closer relations with Russia, the best thing that the three countries should look into right now is materializing their three-way defense, their army that they formed, the Sahel army, because that way it's easier for them to deal with the groups that are cropping up all over, killing villagers all over Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, because that is now the remaining method, having tried propaganda. ECOWAS saying that three countries withdrawal is going to undermine the freedom of movement and the common market. ECOWAS has about 400 million people, with about half of them being from, how many people are in Nigeria? Nigeria has, I think, 200 million people, if I'm not wrong. So let me see Nigeria's population. So ECOWAS has 400 million people, half of them being Nigerians. And the three nations were among the most stable countries. Nigeria has 218.5 million people. Half of ECOWAS is Nigeria. So the three countries were among the most stable ECOWAS countries, considering, for example, Nigeria with Boko Haram, not even stable, and it hasn't been doing so well economically and in every other area. So the three countries were very vital, or they were very vital. They were very important for ECOWAS to continue being operational. And that is why ECOWAS has been on the begging side ever since they left, because they need the three countries more than the three countries need ECOWAS. And a big shout out to Jiba Jaba, who's with me. So the three countries do not need ECOWAS as much as ECOWAS needs them, because you can't be the economic state of West African countries when the three most stable countries in your bloc are leaving you to want to work. So that is what is happening in Burkina Faso now, that they have decided to fully withdraw from ECOWAS, and they have removed the ECOWAS logo from their passports, and Traore has ordered a new biometric registration to be done, so that the people of Burkina Faso can be able to access passports that do not have the ECOWAS logo on it. That was Burkina Faso. And the WHO is reporting that there has been a surge in global cholera cases, and there has been a vaccine shortage. So that the WHO is asking for funding. WHO Director General, his name is Tedros Adhanom, said that the cholera situation in Africa especially is worsening. It's a worsening. He described it as a worsening situation. They say there was a significant increase in both cholera cases and deaths in 2023. So he is requesting and asking that funding be added to them, so that they can be able to facilitate for more vaccines for the same. WHO has published new data on cholera for 2023, showing an increase in both cases of infections and deaths. They say that deaths from cholera last year increased by 71% compared with 2022, and the number of cases increased by 13%. It said that in 2023, over 342,000 deaths and over 2,400 deaths and 342,000 cases were reported by WHO in all regions, with the worst cases, most of the cases coming from Africa. So he said that as the world is now facing the growth in cholera crisis, there's an urgent, I'm reading directly from his speech, there's an urgent need for increased vaccines production, improved sanitation, and better access to clean water. I agree with him on the last two parts. There's need for improved sanitation, there's need for better access to clean water. You tackle those two, you don't need vaccines. People get clean sanitations, improved sanitation, people get better access to clean water. You do not need vaccines. You have tackled the problem at root, and you won't need to get vaccinated because you won't get sick. So the money that WHO is asking to produce vaccines for cholera should be money that should be invested into what Tedros Adhanom, the WHO Director General, said at the end: better sanitation, access to clean water. Nobody gets sick. But then that again goes back to the economic situations of countries. If a country is economically empowered, if people have better standards of living, you won't hear of cholera because people will be living in areas with better sanitation, they'll be having better access to clean water. Vaccinate people as much as you want, but if you do not empower them economically, then you're still going to drink the dirty water. So unless you're vaccinating them and then now telling them, now that you've been vaccinated, you can go drink all the dirty water that you want because you won't get cholera. We're not tackling the problem. This is what Professor PLO equates to having diarrhea, then stitching the anus instead of you getting medical attention. Vaccinating people is not dealing with the root cause of cholera. The root cause of cholera is lack of clean water, poor sanitation. The main cause of the lack of clean water and the sanitation problem is the economic situations that people have. They live in slums, they live in makeshift houses, the sewer systems are not working, the sewer systems mixing with clean water, the water not being even clean in the first place. That is the main cause that is causing the cholera cases, not the lack of vaccines. Not the lack of vaccines. This is similar to vaccinating people against hunger so that they don't die of hunger. Deal with the root problem, then you won't need vaccines. Jiba Jaba says, cholera that is from untreated sewages, infiltrating groundwater or old infrastructure. Of course, exactly, Jiba Jaba goes back to the economic situations in countries and the poor planning and the lack of governance, because if a country had proper structures, proper planning structures, then it wouldn't need we would not have cases like these ones, the cases that we have of, I don't know, untreated sewage infiltrating groundwater or pipe water. Now people are drinking. These are not problems that we should be speaking about in 2024, and vaccines is not the issue. Cholera is not caused by lack of vaccines. It's caused by lack of proper planning and sanitation and hygiene and clean water. Address those things, you've addressed cholera. Use the money that you want to invest in. You want to invest in the vaccines to actually build industries or something to empower the people and see what happens. Do a Dangote. Today I'm happy because Dangote built an industry in Nigeria. I'm not even going to dig further and try and look at why he did that. I'm just happy he built a refinery in Nigeria, and the refinery is going to employ Nigerians, and that is good. And the money is going to come back to Nigeria. He's a businessman. Of course, he has a selfish interest, but he's empowering his people too. That was all that was happening today in Africa. Joby is coming up in a bit. I've actually eaten up her time. I started a little bit late today due to unavoidable circumstances. Thank you, Jiba Jaba, for joining me. I've seen you telling me to drop something on your WhatsApp. I'm going to do that immediately after the show. And he says, or having to draw water where big games drink and bath in. That is another cause of the water, because you have waterborne diseases in Africa still so bad. The other day, people were dying of typhoid in DRC. Typhoid in 2024. Typhoid, cholera, bilharzia. Those are the things that we're still talking about in Africa in 2024. Bilharzia is a big problem where they plant rice, even in Kenya. Waterborne diseases from the lack of access to clean water. Anyway, make sure you join Joby in the next few minutes. She'll be here with her musical show. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's always a pleasure. Much love, family.